Hello, my name is Noel Bell. I'm a psychotherapist based in London. And in this podcast, I'm delighted to be chatting to Mark Drax. Mark, we've had quite a bit of discussion about this, what we're going to call you. We've settled on recovery coach. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Noel. Recovery coach is absolutely fine. I tend to like the concept of what I do, which is helping people to rediscover their self. So self-recovery coaching is a little bit more expansive, but recovery coach is absolutely great.
Excellent. Now, we're going to be discussing problematical sexual behaviour and your involvement with SASH, the Society for the Advancement of Sexual Health, based in Atlanta, Georgia. And also your work with deep coaching and self-recovery. So I guess just to set the scene really, and just a little bit of self-disclosure, which is on your website, so we're not really dealing with anything that's going to be anything you're not unwilling to talk about, but you've had a history of sex addiction. Could you just maybe encapsulate briefly what your background, your personal journey has been with sex addiction?
Certainly. Yes, sex addiction, I can actually literally remember when it started. And I will try not to be too graphic so as to shock your listeners. But basically, I went through a period of child abuse, physical abuse at school, at a British boarding school, between the age of 8 and 11, 8 and 12. I don't hang my hat on that and say that's the only cause of why I ended up struggling with addiction through decades following. But definitely my choice of addiction was triggered by needing to take away the terror and fear I was experiencing in that boarding school. And I can remember the night, with detail I won't go into, when I lay there on my bed and masturbated for the first time. And that literally gave me such power, because by doing it, I was in heaven, which I'm sure many people will relate to. But it was a wrong heaven. It was a heaven that was taking away pain. So I learned at age 11 that I could give myself pleasure and it would take away the pain and fear of what was being done to me. That's where I believe my sex addiction started. I could have stumbled into my father's drinks cabinet and sloshed back some whiskey and gone, God, that feels great. And that might have become my addiction. I happened to stumble into sex. Therefore, that will probably hope you and your listeners realize I don't see many differences between addicts. I see the manifestations as being different, but I see the core reasons that we use addiction as very similar, i.e. we are medicating emotional pain. Yeah. And the rest is pretty much history. I've then, over the last several decades, used, tragically, just about every manner of sex known to man or beast. Well, not including beasts, I might add, or dead. But unfortunately, you name everything else, and I've probably been there and done it and tried it just to make myself feel better, because it escalated, and one day masturbating wasn't enough, and the rest, you can probably imagine that what I've done is pretty sad.
So, Mark, you reached the rooms of 12-step fellowships, and for anyone who is not aware, there's some, what we call the S fellowships, largely based on the Alcoholics Anonymous model, the 12-step model, abstinence-based approach. What did you find and what was your experiences?
Interesting. There are 3 well-known S fellowships, as you've correctly referred to them, S basically meaning sex. And there are 3 in this country anyway that are notable. There is SA, which is Sexaholics Anonymous. There is SAA, which is Sex Addicts Anonymous. And there is SLAA, which is Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. They all provide a fairly different, they all attend to a fairly different market. SA is known in the rooms, as they're known. It's known as being quite extreme. They don't tolerate much. I've heard, and I will admit, I've never attended an SA meeting, but I have heard on the grapevine that, if you even confess to the fact you've masturbated once, they basically throw their book at you and say you're a bad person. Now, this may be, some people might be sitting out there screaming, saying, how dare you say that about SA? And I hope I'm wrong, but I've heard about it, and I've chosen not to go to something so extreme. SAA, by comparison, as far as I'm concerned, which I have been attending for 15 years, I have found to have been an unbelievable support. I went through the doors of my first SAA meeting on the 21st of June 2004. I shall never forget it. And it changed my life because I suddenly found a bunch of men. I go to the men only meetings, and I'll say why in a second, who are prepared to be honest and start to speak. And I realized I wasn't alone. That fundamentally is the purpose of 12-step groups. You are shown you're not alone with this problem, and there's somewhere safe you can go to talk about it. I did try SLAA on the recommendations of my therapist and my then girlfriend, because they were both very concerned about what I'd been doing and what was discovered in June 2004. And I went to a mixed meeting soon after I left primary treatment. So we're talking late 2004. And I was sitting in the room, and a very well-known public figure, a female, was in the same meeting. And I sat there for about an hour and a half wanting to have sex with this woman because I found her attractive. And I thought to myself after that meeting, how am I going to get help sitting in a meeting wanting to have sex with someone sitting across on the sofa opposite me? Mm. So I thought, no, certainly for the foreseeable future, I need to be in these meetings where it's men only, so I can really not be let myself be led astray. Not blaming her or anybody else. This is my head, my lack of boundaries at that time. Could I go to a mixed meeting today and not fantasize about a woman opposite me? Yeah, absolutely. I believe I could. Have I gone back? No, I don't need to, because SAA has been that supportive. So that's just my experience of the three. I think they all do a good job for people that find a home in that one meeting versus another. And even within SAA, not all meetings are a good match for everybody. I think they are the most prolific. I think in London, there's 2 SAA meetings a day. There's definitely one a week in London. Not so prolific throughout the country, but in London, it's the biggest fellowship, I believe. But even then, not every meeting is going to suit every man. I've heard people say, I love that Monday meeting and I don't like the Wednesday meeting. Well, great. Go to the one that works for you.
So Mark, does your problem with addictions translate into other areas? Do you have drink and substance abuse problems or codependency as well, or is it just sex?
It's interesting. I laugh because when I was in primary treatment in 2004, they were determinedly excited to try and pin a whole multitude of addictions on me. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. I've never put a non-medicinal drug in my body in 50 years. I got sick of drinking once when some friends spiked my drink at a pub age 17. I've never been sick from drinking alcohol again. I don't even really like it. So I guess I got lucky or unlucky. I mean, I don't think having an addiction is lucky, but yes, I definitely got lucky in that I haven't struggled with any other notable, obvious addiction. However, absolutely, I have hidden away in my office in times gone by. I've hidden away because I've been too frightened to deal with something with my girlfriend. I haven't wanted to face her, and it was easier to stay at work and pretend I was working late, when sadly I wasn't necessary. I may have been ringing and organizing other sex exploits. So not healthy, but yes, I would say I've used work at times. Codependency, absolutely. I think codependency goes hand in hand with most addictions. I think everybody's a little bit codependent, actually. You can quote me on that. But has codependency ever become full blown? At times, yes, probably. I've read that wonderful book, Facing Codependency by Pierre Motherdy. It could be called Facing Sex Addiction. So therefore, to me, it shows how synchronous they are, because I got just as much help from that book about codependency. I got just as much help for sex addiction as I did for codependency. I did attend CODA, Codependence Anonymous, for a while, and that helped enormously. And through 2005 and 2006, I went to a few CODA meetings, and it was really good, actually. They helped me too.
So one thing, Mark, I mean, I've worked with people who have behavioral addiction problems, but find the idea of going to a public meeting full of strangers talking about intimate details of their life, they just find that really difficult. How would you advise someone listening to this who might have behavioral addiction problems, but finds the idea of going to a meeting full of strangers very scary?
It's a beautiful question, Noel. Thank you for that. I recall my first meeting with horror. going into this thing called Sex Addicts Anonymous, into a little vestry in Pimlico, sitting down, listening to roughly 15 other men at that time, divulging some stuff. I remember seeing that first meeting thinking, Christ, you guys are weird. Not realizing I had far more problems than them. Well, that would come out in this course of time. I would say to people, it takes courage, especially sex addiction, because sex has been so demonized and stigmatized for so long by everything from Queen Victoria's court to the church to religion, you name it, it's had a go at sex. Why are we more comfortable today watching a movie where someone walks into a church and butchers 50 people with a knife and a gun, and I'm referring to that film Kingsman? Why are we more comfortable watching that than watching a man and a woman have sex on the big screen? Very interesting question that my girlfriend asked me some time ago. And I thought, wow, that is pretty profound. Why is that? Why do we like violence? Why do we put violence and tolerate it more than something so beautiful as sex? Well, that's a question you and I could debate for a week. So we won't go into that, but it is one worth asking. So I say to people, when you are looking, when you're looking in a mirror saying, am I a bad person? Have I done something wrong? Just because I've visited a prostitute or whatever and my marriage is falling apart. Don't say, what have I done wrong? Say, what was done to me? Why have I done these things? What is inside me that is making me so uncomfortable that I have to masturbate 5 times a day and risk downloading porn on the office computer or go and see a prostitute every other day because I'm so unhappy and I'm so afraid to talk to my wife? Basically, what the F is going on? That's what I want them to ask. And if they can start to get comfortable with the fact that something clearly is wrong, they will probably say to themselves, I need help. And that's when they will break through the stigma of thinking that just because they've done some maybe questionably healthy things in the land great arena of sex, that it makes them a blackly listed bad person. You are not. You've just got something inside you that needs exploring, because it's thinking of people that have explored sex dysfunctionally as bad people that prevents you from getting help. Why is it so easy for an alcoholic to walk into Alcoholics Anonymous? They get a pat on the back. When you hear someone say, I'm on the wagon, they go, oh, well done you, good on you, let's applaud you. But you sit in a room full of strangers and say, I struggle from sex addiction, I guarantee the first thing through someone's mind is going to be the word pedophile. Because that's how quickly people reach from one level to the next. There's infinity. People don't understand the fact that you can be a sex addict and actually not be a pedophile. And unfortunately, society has done a very good job of tying those things and other things into it. So I say, yes, my heart goes out to people that struggle with sex addiction in particular. That all the behavioral addictions are highly stigmatized. Anorexia, hideously stigmatized. Look at the bloody fashion industry and how many anorexics are kind of fashion industry. You know, and do they want to talk about it? Do they think they're bad, broken people? Yes, they do. Are they dying? Yes, they are. Someone I was in treatment with in 2004 died within 6 months of me leaving treatment by the end of 2004. So these behavioral addictions are bloody hard to get your head around, because guess what? You can't stop them. You can't stop eating. You can't stop having sex if you want to have a healthy life and procreate and have a family. You can stop drinking and drugging because the body doesn't need it. At least on that one, it's black and white. But behavioral addictions are hard to come to terms with, because you're doing something which you're, on one hand, you might say, oh, I've just got a healthy sexual appetite, or oh, I just want to keep fit, so I'm going to go and exercise 12 hours a day. Well, that's a bit exactly 3 hours a day. But even that's an exaggeration if you really are exercising 3 hours a day, unless you're a professional athlete. So what is healthy and what's not? And that is something that the behavioral addict struggles to come to terms with. What is healthy sex versus unhealthy sex? What is healthy eating versus unhealthy eating?
And have you found your own personal experience of 12-step S fellowships to be sex positive or sex negative?
God, what a great question. I think things are changing, Noel. I think when I first entered SAA in, my things are out of focus, there we go. When I first entered SAA in 2004, it was very definitely sex negative. It was, masturbation was off the table, basically. And in some people's eyes still is. The whole attitude towards abstinence was very strong. I think that came on the back of certain people in America bringing out early attempts at sex addiction books, etc., etc., and it was quite sex negative. I think it kind of played into the time. There was the AIDS epidemic not that long ago. Let's not forget that. So I think there are things which have demonized sex, tragically, for all the wrong reasons, over the last, well, it'll be since the 80s, 30 years. I mean, I'm 50, so I'm a product of the 80s, etc. And I can remember, going from a time when it was all pretty frivolous, and then AIDS hit, and everything was demonized and terrible, and there was a massive global knee-jerk reaction to that. And then, of course, things continue. So these days, I'm glad to say, and that leads, I suppose, into SASH and why I work with SASH. Yeah. SASH stands for the Society for the Advancement of Sexual Health. And I like that title. I like the fact that we are there to support people wanting to understand and learn what is the definition of sexual health. It's not, oh, I've got to go somewhere because I'm broken and I can't have sex. No one, hopefully no SASH member or no one that understands SASH and its message is going to ever tell you you can't have sex again. Quite the opposite. They're going to say, well, let's get you in touch with someone who can help you start to differentiate between maybe the fact that seeing a prostitute 3 times a week when you're married isn't quite so good for the marriage. But there are other things that could be, and let's talk about how's your sex life with your wife and move you back in that direction, that kind of thing.
Great. Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. Because I think sometimes there's a sense from certain people maybe involved in alternative sexual lifestyles. I'm thinking maybe swingers who think or who will say that there's no problem in their life. It's therapists and the 12 steppers who are creating the problem by saying, that there's addiction when there's not. It's just healthy life choices. So do you have any views on, because some would say by virtue of its very nature, swinging would be addictive.
Mm-hmm. Well, what a fascinating, I love your questions, Noel. I have some quite strong opinions on it. I've been involved in that world. I explored the world of what's commonly known as fetishism, which and I know the word fetish can mean you happen to have fancy all manner of things, but I am talking more about people that love sort of maybe kinky sex or sadomasochism, that kind of thing. I've explored that for pretty much most of the last 50 years, certainly since I lost my virginity at age 17. I'm now 50. So I've explored that. I have explored it privately and publicly. So I have experience of this firsthand, quite a lot of it. I have attended a couple of swingers parties in my time. I didn't like them because I happened to find them boring, which might sound strange for a sex addict. But sex addicts will tell you that actually we have remarkably little intercourse. It's much more about doing things in private and creating our own illusion of control and power. It's actually, ironically, sex addicts don't have much sex. And that's a fairly accurate blanket statement.
So there's the preoccupation, increasing obsession.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's absolute. It's the growing obsession and the thoughts, the amount of time you spend planning, thinking about it, getting high. I can remember going back years, I could plan a meetup in 2 weeks' time. I'd be high for 2 weeks, looking forward to whatever I was gonna do in 2 Saturdays' time. So I was high. That got me through the 2 weeks. You could say I might as well have been on drugs for 2 weeks. I was, but they were in my head.
Yeah.
I think there's absolutely, I think people can live healthy lives as swingers or fetishists or in polyamorous relationships. Do I think they're all broken, bad, and wrong and need therapy? No, I don't. Absolutely not. I think I've been in enough crazy clubs in my life and enough questionable situations, and I've seen people who absolutely look to me very lonely and very broken. How do I know that? Because I've been there. I've been lonely, I've been broken, and I've been in these places for all the wrong reasons. Absolutely. So I know, speaking from experience, that a percentage of people that attend swingers events, etc., absolutely, if you took a typical swingers club, sat down 100 people and invited them to 10 hours of free therapy each and got to the bottom of why they're doing it, I guarantee you would find sex addicts amongst them.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you'd find some remarkably stable marriages too. And that's where that throws a lot of people's hair on end. It throws people into confusion because they say they do want to pathologize things. Absolutely. I think there are many people that want to pathologize and demonize just because they don't do it, and they think that one man having 2 girlfriends, or one man being tied up and tickled by 6 women, whatever it might be, you know, kissing someone's feet, it's all out there. They look at that and judge it as, dirty, you strange person. Well, you know, that person might think that you're strange for riding a horse every Saturday. I mean, you know, where do you draw the line?
Yeah, and it's interesting, when I'm chatting to Mary Deach, the president of SASH, she just more or less said, it's not about being sex negative, it's about each individual, all of us, defining for us what is a healthy sexuality for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, you can go out on one extreme and say clearly in today's society, it is dreadfully tragic, sad, and wrong for an adult to sexually interact with a minor. Yeah, that's easy, that's black and white. But what is wrong with 2 adults in the consensual environment of their own drawing room, bedroom, whatever, and behind closed doors doing something a little kinky or a little whatever to spice up their sex life? Well, my answer is nothing is wrong with that. If it then spills over into, let's say, a husband, he can't talk to his wife because he's got something in his background that makes him afraid to share his heart, and so he starts pouring his heart out to a prostitute 3 times a week, absolutely, then he's got a problem. Or if he's downloading porn and going into his man cave when he comes home from work and abandoning his wife and children to download porn for 4 hours every night, absolutely. Then you can start talking pathology and start saying, mate, you might have a problem.
Yes, absolutely.
It's got to be taken case by case. And people have, like you, like me, have to start helping people explore why they're doing it. That's the key. It's not what are you doing, it's why are you doing it, Noel. That's my real cry here.
Yeah, sure. And I think also, yeah, when people start noticing and being honest with themselves about negative impacts in other parts of their life, that's when I think problem behavior starts to emerge. So, Mark, do you want to just tell us a little about the what you're calling the PSB 101, the basic?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's clarify that for start. PSB 101 is kind of a name that we've come up with on the halls of the SASH board. The 101 is purely rather like saying mathematics 101, you know, a computing 101. You went to university, so did I. We had, you know, core management 101. It's just basically saying this is the core foundation aspect of sex. Yeah. So the 101, there's not going to be a 102, by the way. It's just a bit of fun. But PSB is the important part here, which stands for problematic sexual behavior. And the whole point of PSB 101 is it's a 45-minute to an hour presentation, an hour including Q&A, for anyone that's qualified, and I will qualify the qualification in a second, but anyone that's qualified to present this. So we're developing it so that, let's say you're a therapist in Northumberland and you work in Newcastle, and you have a community you're known in, and you have decided to hear that you've got some of your flock. If you could be a preacher, a priest, a coach, a therapist, a doctor, a lawyer even. And you've started to hear that in your community of people you're helping that this is a problem. So you might then start researching, how do I tell this group of people what is healthy and what is unhealthy sex? So we've developed PSB 101 so that someone like me can stand up in front of 10 or 20 or 100 people at a conference, at a business meeting or whatever, and present it to people that want to know what is the difference. What is problematic sexual behavior? What is healthy sexual behavior? And then what we hope by making this presentation available to people to present anybody they want to in the world is that we will spread the knowledge that A, SASH exists, B, we are sex positive, because this presentation is not in any way going to demonize sex, and C, that people will then know of a portal they can reach out to get help and start, if the presentation triggers concerns, that someone watches the presentation and goes, wow, I hadn't thought about that. I think I want to explore that. Maybe I'm seeing this prostitute once a month even, despite the fact I'm married. I hadn't thought about that angle, and maybe I want to go talk to someone about that. We just want people, we want to trigger people's imagination.
Yes.
In terms of the people that are qualified to teach it, it would be any therapist that's got some sort of standing, that has made presentations at the odd conference, who can prove to us that they are working in the therapeutic community, they have a basic understanding of therapists and how to help people. You're a fairly trustworthy person to present this. Clearly, it helps if you have some understanding, if you're presenting it, if you have some understanding of what sex addiction is. If you're a therapist who's never touched sex addiction in your life, yeah, maybe we're going to want to help you, prepare you better before you stand up in front of an audience for 45 minutes and preach problematic sexual behavior. So yeah, clearly we will be ratifying that and assessing people that want to present it. But we do want to get this out. It's not something that requires a degree. It's not something that requires you to do any specialist training specifically to make the presentation. Otherwise, we would shoot ourselves in the foot. We want to get the message out there that problematic sexual behavior exists, and we can point them in the right direction to get help for it.
Which is very different to the Patrick Kahn's model, where, you know, what's his organization? The
ITAP.
Yeah. Who are, yeah.
Go on, next one.
No, I was just going to say, like, the you have to be specially trained, and then it's all very contained within an expert body of knowledge. So you're seeking to kind of spread the word more loosely, is my impression of what you're saying.
Yes, well, okay, well, let's make a clear differentiation. The PSP 101 is not a qualification. What ITAP do is they have this qualification called CSAT, CSAT, which stands for Certified Sex Addiction Therapist. To become a CSAT, you've got to have a basic degree in some sort of mental health. You've got to have a master's degree in some sort of mental health related thing, and only then will they consider you to even sit there through their CSAT training, which is very expensive and very complex. I think there's less than 2,000 CSATs in the world or something. I forget what the statistics are. It's not many compared to the hundreds of thousands of therapists. So what ITAP are doing is they've created a very highly regarded and very intense qualification that you can add to your existing therapy qualification. So because you can't, as I say, you can't sit it unless you are a well-trained therapist, beyond to minimum a master's degree or beyond. What the PSP 101 is, you probably could actually, if you're a therapist, you've probably got a degree, but you don't need any highly specialized training presented. We want this to be an informative 1-hour chat that could literally could be presented in the boardroom of a major international company. I won't name one because someone will think I'm calling them all sex addicts. You think of a big corporation, somewhere within their human resource department, they might have stumbled into the fact that if they've got 100,000 employees, some of them might have been caught downloading porn. Oh, well, they've heard about this thing called problematic sexual behavior. They've gone online, they've Googled sex addiction, they've stumbled across SASH, and we've helped. We say, do you know what? We could send someone to your organization, and we could present to anyone that's interested in your boardroom a 1-hour chat on problematic sexual behavior. That's what this is aimed for. This is not a qualification. So I'm glad to clarify it, and thank you for the question. It's not competing with ITAP.
Right.
Absolutely, SASH is developing a qualification, which will be a more intense thing you can go on and do, and that would be something you would need to be a therapist to undergo. And it's even that is if you want to say it's going to compete with something ITAP's doing, fine. I don't think it is going to compete because it's still fundamentally different enough. It's designed to enable a much broader range of people to get an education in what problematic sexual behavior is and how to start helping people. Will our future, I mean, we already have this qualification. It's called the APTSB, but it's currently being redrafted and modernized, and it'll be relaunched either later this year or early next. But we've had that. I took it 3 years ago. So we do have, SASH has a qualification. It's not on the same level of intensity or cost as Patrick Kahn's organization's CSAT qualification. It doesn't even pretend to be. So we are doing things quite differently. Is there room for us both? Absolutely, because This is a massive problem.
Yeah.
And SASH is not trying to be ITAP. We are trying to be a globally recognized organization as a starting point for people wanting to understand if they have a problem, and if they do, we can help you find a solution. That's what SASH is all about.
Yep. No, that sounds wonderful. Mark, it's been a tremendously informative experience for me chatting to you. I hope people have benefited from your generous self-disclosure and your generosity of spirit in sharing your own personal journey, as well as how people can get help. Where would people go to find out more about the SASH tools and resources?
Oh, literally the good old website, sash.net.
And you can be contacted. You have your own website as well.
You're very kind. I have my own website. It's all the w's.mymentor.uk.com. If you Google my name, you will find it.
Great. It's been a pleasure chatting to you, and I hope to chat to you again very soon.
No, it's a great honor, and thank you for some really beautiful questions. Very sensitively presented. Greatly enjoyed talking. Hope it helps someone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.